Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Central Mississippi Hub for Volunteers and Nonprofits Emergency Preparedness Community Meetings. This is number 2 of 4. So thank you so much for joining us today. These meetings are for us to connect nonprofits and volunteers to organizations that deal with disaster response. We are in, if Brian, you can tell me, we are in tornado season. Are we in tornado? Yeah. So in tornado season, so if the case of disaster comes, we want to be there to give you all information, especially if resources need to go to nonprofits, go to the community, and you all can connect with these organizations and the volunteers if they need volunteers. We want to let you know what's going on with these organizations. On the first meeting, I gave a detailed review of how the hubs interact with disaster response, and I won't go over that tonight, but in the chat, I put in our YouTube video for that. So if you want to go back and review that, we will love for you to do so. So we're going to go ahead and get right into it. Our first speaker will be Tamika Smith-Jewett of the American Red Cross. Tamika Smith-Jewett is a native of Fort Wayne, Indiana. She earned her BA in broadcasting from Southern University in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where she began her career in broadcast journalism more than 20 years ago. Tamika worked for Alabama media groups in Huntsville and Birmingham and Fort Wayne. In Jackson, Mississippi, she was the weekend news anchor and reporter at WJTV. In 2008, she made a career move to become the Director of Public Affairs for the Central Mississippi chapter of the American Red Cross. In 2012, Tamika was named the Senior Communications Specialist for the Mississippi Conference of the United Methodist Church. After 5 years with the conference, she returned to the American Red Cross as the Regional Director of Communications and Marketing Manager. In April 2020, she was named the Executive Director for the organization's Southwest Mississippi chapter. Additionally, Tamika is the host of Law Call that airs on WLPT. She's a member of several professional communications groups and is a recipient of multiple communication awards. She volunteers her time to support aspiring journalists and community organizations. Tamika is married to TV and radio personality Rob J. Jewett. They live in Madison with their daughter, Madison, a sophomore at Southern University in Baton Rouge. Tamika is a lifelong member of the African Methodist Episcopal Church. She and her family are members of Pearl Street AME Church in Jackson, Mississippi. Welcome, Tamika.
I guess you can hear me now, huh? Thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad to be here with you guys this evening. Thank you. So do you want me to just go ahead and get started?
Yes, go ahead and get into the Red Cross, what you do with your chapter, and we want to hear all about it.
Okay, first of all, I just want to say I would not be a good Red Crosser if I did not acknowledge that April is the month of the military child. So if there's anybody listening on this call, I just want to say thank you on behalf of the American Red Cross for your personal sacrifice and bravery on the home front. Many people know the American Red Cross. We've been at the side of our nation's military and our armed forces over 140 years, and we continue to serve. So wherever our armed forces are, there is a Red Cross representative nearby. So thank you to everyone on the call for their service. I also want to say this April is also a special time in Red Cross. Well, I wouldn't say so much a special time, but a time that we acknowledge toward the end of the month, going into the next month, that we remind people to start testing their smoke alarms. So take this as your formal announcement to start testing those smoke alarms at the beginning of the month. And so spread the word. It's a great way to save lives. We know here in Mississippi that smoke alarms do save lives. Myself, I've actually interviewed a couple of families who actually were able to get out of their homes thanks to American Red Cross installed smoke alarms. So please double check those smoke alarms, make sure they're working monthly in your community. And also, this month of April is special to me personally because I am now the executive director for the American Red Cross, and I have been in this position for 1 year. So April marked my 1 year anniversary, but I have been around for a very long time, as you shared there with the Red Cross. But one of the things that was really interesting, if you look at the time span, I've actually been in this position the entire time of the pandemic. So when I accepted the job, it was just a few weeks out. And of course, as a communicator and, really touching the mission over the years by interviewing our volunteers and the people that we serve at the Red Cross, I was so excited, just like an opportunity like this, because a lot of times I would reach larger audiences. So being able to, sit closer with people face to face, financial donors, community meetings. I look forward to that opportunity, but obviously COVID comes along and it just actually halted a lot of those plans. We at the American Red Cross nationwide across the country here, we have been home since mid-March, but our services have not stopped. And I'm proud to say that we just had to figure out a different way of getting the work done. So there is a need right now more than ever to have volunteers in the backyard of our communities. And I say that because after, those first few early weeks during the pandemic, when our offices closed and everybody, you get your items, go home, you're setting up your offices, 90% of our workforce is volunteers. So many of our volunteers were falling in that category of the at-risk people for COVID, or, just families were afraid to step out and, volunteer their time with the American Red Cross. So it was a challenge to us. So volunteer recruitment became very important. Usually many people will see Red Cross in the news when a big disaster happens. And a lot of times we were able to call people in from all across the country to come and help out the Red Cross. Well, because of COVID, people weren't getting on planes and it really wasn't really safe to drive because we just did not know what to expect. So one of the things we have learned is that, there's such a strong need to have more people to respond at a moment's notice. But again, as I mentioned, I'm so thankful that the mission never stopped. We just slowed down and figure out a way to continue services because COVID was going on, but home fires are still happening on a regular basis. We were talking a little bit earlier about what the atmosphere was like. A lot of people were at home, so they were doing more cooking, inside their homes. And so with people being at home, we did see an increase of home fires, and our volunteers needing to respond. So then we had tornadoes that came along a few months after the pandemic. Those early spring storms are starting to kick in. So what we did, we instead of opening up large shelters that we see from time to time, we couldn't do that. So there became a need to immediately put people into hotel rooms as opposed to, large sheltering locations so that people can be safe. So we were doing different things that obviously increased our expenses. So we're going up when you think about, paying for hotels. There was that need there. And then also the expenses around PPEs, that personal protective equipment, gloves and sanitizers was needed at that time. And so for those volunteers who would, who felt comfortable with helping us just deliver food to those hotel locations where we had people housed. And also working with our partners. We have a lot of, partnerships across, from local government to other nonprofits, and we're all just, helping each other and trying to figure out, how do we continue to be there to meet the needs of our community. So as one thing I just want to go back to just around the mission of the American Red Cross. The mission of the Red Cross is to prevent and alleviate human suffering in the face of emergencies by mobilizing the power of our volunteers and the generosity of our donors. So when you think about just that overall mission, the power of our volunteers and, here at a whole year setting, it quite naturally for us that fit, we were truly impacted and continue to be impacted in some ways with our service delivery. So if anybody's looking for a volunteer opportunity, we are always looking for volunteers. You can sign up at redcross.org. We love to talk to you about joining our workforce, as well as I mentioned, sheltering, because we are in that spring tornado season. And soon we'll be going into hurricane season. There's a need for us to increase our sheltering partners, because a lot of people have a misconception that when we say a Red Cross shelter that we have a building or somewhere set up. But we rely on partners to open up their businesses and their facilities to the American Red Cross. So we bring in our trained workforce to serve the needs of that community. So because of social distancing, we want these spaces to be large enough where we can, actually have enough spacing between families, enough room for cots and other, necessary items that may be needed in a sheltering situation. So these are ongoing needs for the American Red Cross. But the one thing that people can do today, and I'm so thankful for your training today, the Mississippi Alliance, because it falls just under what we promote all year round, and that's preparedness. The Red Cross has lots of free emergency preparedness training. We're doing a lot of this work virtually now, participating in calls. We're training volunteers, new volunteers to go into communities and train. Like even now, if there's someone out here that wants to take the training and spread the word about emergency preparedness in their community, we love to have you because we do know that this training works. We're also training youth. We even some of our children. We have teenage volunteers who are helping us out as well. And so, again, all this information can be found on our social media pages or also to the Red Cross website. The other point that I want to make today, there's 3 simple steps that people can always do all year round, and that is make sure you have a kit, make sure that you have a plan, and stay informed. Those 3 steps can help you in any kind of disaster, and all this information can be found again on our website. You can also download the American Red Cross app, and that app is absolutely awesome because you can get weather alerts. You can tell family members you're safe if there's an emergency in your community. So I mean, we myself at 7 years of telling the Red Cross story, because I consider myself a storyteller, taking all those years as a journalist and bringing those skills to the table with the Red Cross. I'm just fortunate, to really have that, that view of how the mission really helps. When the volunteers come to us, everybody's here for a reason. They have awesome stories. I mean, a lot of times I find myself crying. Some of them have come to us because the Red Cross was there for them in their time of need. I can think of several situations, even when I left for a small time with American Red Cross, there was a volunteer who had just joined, and he had had a home fire. And then to come back and join and, back to the organization, and to see him still serving the mission, even after having his leg amputated within that 5 years that I was away. I mean, it just warms my heart, just to see people, regardless of what's going on, people's thoughts about the organization, they just want to help, and they are committed to being there. So I'm happy for our volunteers. I know right now we keep these little, masks nearby, even myself here at home, this is the world we're in, but the heart is there, the mission is there, and we're just, ready to welcome anybody who feels that they can contribute. And financial donors, we need you. We definitely need you. As I mentioned, our expenses are going up because of, how we're responding. And I, was listening recently on the news. We have so many disasters happening. They're happening more rapid. We just had the winter storm. I'm from Indiana. I thought I was getting away from the snow. I had a whole week of snow in Mississippi. So, things happen. And so it's just the culture that we're in, it's the climate we're in, and we all have to work together just to make sure that we're safe. So if anybody has questions, I'm happy to answer any questions. or if you just want to go to the website, our information's there. Feel free to email. We'd love to talk with you more about, keeping this mission going for our community.
Thank you so much, Tamika. Feel free to unmute yourself if you have any questions for Tamika, and I'll start off. So you said you've had several virtual trainings to prepare. How often do you have those, and when does a volunteer get to that point? Do they put an application in? It has to be interviewed, and what is the process?
Yes, if a person's interested in volunteering, they can go to redcross.org and sign up to become a volunteer. We take a lot of pride in, quickly getting those applications pushed through and a follow-up phone call just to find out what the volunteer interest is, because some people may not be aware of all the opportunities with the Red Cross. So many people think about disaster, but we have people who work in our operations. I'm so proud. There's a young lady who just graduated from Belhaven University, and she's a volunteer. The last 3 years, she helps, check in all the mail, and she's coding those, the donations to the Red Cross. And so, again, when I say 90% of the workforce is volunteers, that is truly the case. So just go online, sign up, and it's, you should hear something within less than a week's time from the American Red Cross.
What are some of the virtual opportunities that you all have?
Yeah, we have a very sophisticated system of virtual opportunities, because you can actually talk with our disaster program manager, and this team can customize the training. Right now, if you just want to talk about preparing for spring storms, or just tornadoes, or hurricanes, I mean, they can specify that presentation. And whether this is a presentation for adults or younger generations, youth and elementary school age children. So all you just basically is talk to call up our team. Carrie Bush is always available to just help you determine what needs or the communication you want from your area. Recently, we just went into a partnership with the Jackson Public School District. So we are going to train students all year, not all year, but all summer long, their students. And I think there's more than 1,600 kids who've already registered to take this preparedness training, because a lot of times people forget about the kids. Tornadoes and disasters happen. They may be home alone, and mom and dad are at work when a storm comes through. Even myself, when my daughter started driving, I would be concerned because, teenagers, they really don't consider the weather. They're just out there driving, thinking they're going to, get a smoothie from somewhere or hang out at the mall. But so they're just not as cautious about weather as adults are. And so you need to talk with them. What do you do when, you find yourself driving through heavy rain, or, there's a tornado warning? They need to download those apps and know exactly what to do. So it can be customized. So we have training for just about any type of disaster or preparedness training that anyone's interested in.
So from the moment a disaster hits, how is a volunteer contacted? What kind of shifts may they have? Walk us through that process. What can they expect when a disaster hits?
Well, first of all, when volunteers sign up at Red Cross, you set your schedule, so to speak. You tell us when you're available. So usually when a disaster happens, our disaster preparedness team, disaster cycle services team, they actually start doing a call down and asking volunteers to make themselves available. What is your availability? And so those volunteers, especially the ones that have been doing it, been with us for so long, they know to start calling in, or just log their information online to let our team know that they're available. So that's the first thing. Safety is a priority for our workforce. So unlike like my years of reporting, a lot of times we're kind of following the storms. You want to get those images, but we wait till it's safe. We're working very closely with our local emergency management team And these partnerships are going on all year long. They've established the relationship. You know what your particular job is for that disaster, and when it's safe to hit the, get on the roads. And usually that, again, our emergency management teams are telling us, when it's safe to be out there. And those volunteers respond. And again, it could be different roles. I mean, there's some people who come in and they're just setting up our IT systems. As I mentioned to you earlier, we may be in a building that we need extra power, or, just technical devices to be able to work from that location. So we have people that are setting that up, and these are volunteers that come in and do that for us. They're setting up pots if it's at a shelter. They may be, one of the early jobs is damage assessment, when it's, let's go out there, and we're comparing our assessment to the emergency management agency's assessment and bringing this information together so that we know who needs help in those communities. Myself, I'm reaching out to all the elected officials. So if we do have any elected officials listening, I'm your contact, because a lot of times they get confused and, they're quick to say, oh, well, you can talk to our EMA manager, but I'm working very closely with our disaster program manager. We're sharing our information, and it's just all about making sure we are making sure that people get the help that they need in times of disaster. And also that we're not duplicating services, because you have lots of partners. So if we know, I mean, everybody's at the table, we know who's doing what, so most of our partners know that Red Cross is going to be there for those immediate hours after the disaster. So we can, put people in hotels quickly or whatever. And then, we're working with our long-term, agencies as well, and still assisting them with those clients. So again, the role could be just even a friendly face at the door, because we'll have people come and they're scared. They just lost their home, or they have to stay in a shelter. Maybe you can't do anything but just be a soft shoulder for someone coming in. Obviously, the safe place. So we got plenty of the PPEs and those things in place. So it's different, but there's just something for everyone. I tell people that all the time.
Awesome. I'm glad you mentioned a lot of that, because I'm gonna ask Brian some questions to tie that all together once we get to him. But I have one more question for you. But the Central Mississippi Hub now only serves volunteers, but we serve nonprofits. So what are the partnerships that you have with other organizations? How can nonprofits who provide human services, or whatever the case may be, partner with the Red Cross in the time of disaster, or in blue skies?
Yeah, that's right. And I'm glad you mentioned Blue Sky, because this is something, the work doesn't just start with a disaster. And that's what we even tell volunteers. If anybody's considering becoming a Red Cross volunteer, now's the time to get the training. Because during a disaster, it can be very chaotic. We like to keep it smooth, but it's really, maybe you can shadow, and then there's just a lot of limitations around confidentiality and different things of that sort when it comes to disaster. But as far as partnerships, we're always recruiting new partners all the time. Our main partners are emergency management agencies, so we work very closely with them. And again, that partnership goes on all year round. We're not trying to, get in the face of our emergency management partners when the disaster strikes. And sometimes it happens that way, or it appears that way, because we have volunteers coming in from all over the country, representing the Red Cross. But the beauty of it is they know that job, regardless of where they're coming from. They have had that, standard across the board Red Cross training. All they need to do is learn the roles of the community and be a willing partner to come in and represent us. And so we just, again, we work all year round. We work closely with the Salvation Army, the NAACP. We also, work with our media partners, the Catholic Charities, and so all these, United Methodist Church, and we have so many people that we work with on a regular basis. And we're always recruiting more, but some of the bigger groups, even Mississippi, the Mississippi Food Network, we're in contact with them, just so that, again, we're not duplicating services. but meeting the needs of the community, because it does take a huge community effort to, respond.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tamika. That was a lovely
You.
presentation and gives so much detailed information. I certainly appreciate that. So now we're going to move on to Brian. Brian Grantham is the Deputy Director at Rankin County Emergency Operations. He serves as the EMS Coordinator and Public Information Officer at the Rankin EOC. He has been in that position since 2014. Before emergency management, Brian was a paramedic and firefighter for the cities of Brandon and Flowood, Mississippi. He recently completed his Bachelor's of Science in Emergency Management through Bellevue University. He is married to his wife of 16 years, and they have an 11-year-old daughter. Welcome, Brian.
Well, thank you very much for having me. As we all know, technology can be the greatest thing or the worst thing. I'm sitting here listening to Miss Tamika, and all of a sudden, everybody's face freezes. And so I don't know if it's y'all or if it's me, but all of a sudden I look outside and my daughter's watching TV in the other room, and we have YouTube TV, and it was frozen. I said, oh no, so there's always got to have a backup plan. So I ran outside, grabbed my Wi-Fi, brought it back in, and now I hope we're rocking and rolling.
Yay, thank you.
So, but yeah, just to bring it together, I am the Deputy Director for Rankin County Emergency Operations. We are actually a unique emergency management agency in Rankin County, and I say we're unique because we have about 5 people on staff. Now, a lot of your emergency management agencies in county level, you're looking at maybe 1 person and an administrative assistant. So at Rankin County, not only, of course, we have the director, and I specialize in EMS. We have a fire coordinator, and then we have a guy that's really good with radios and communications. And so we kind of all bring our specialties together whenever there's a disaster. So to work for the betterment of all our citizens in Rankin County. I'm glad you brought up blue skies earlier. People ought to say a lot of times, well, what do you do during a blue sky day? Blue sky days, we're preparing for the gray sky days. We do a lot of training with our volunteer fire departments. We're very involved. Rankin County has approximately 17 volunteer fire departments in our county, along with about 5 municipal or paid fire departments. So steady training with them on the fire side, steady training with them on the medical side, because they do run both calls. It literally takes up the majority of our time doing that. So, you know, I was thinking before we got together tonight about the different times that we have utilized volunteers. One of our biggest thing, and it's actually through MEMA, the Mississippi Emergency Management Agency, they employ disaster reservists. And what they do with their disaster reservists are, you contact MEMA, they basically take everything when it comes to training. They take that on themselves. They make sure they vet the person that's coming in. And if you're good at computers, they're going to put you in that role. If you're good at speaking with the public, they're going to put you in that role. So when we have a disaster and we need somebody to help us out with the paperwork, all the FEMA forms that are involved, if you want to try to get your money back, you better be good at typing. You know, so all we have to do is reach out to MEMA and ask for a disaster reservist for the purposes of paperwork, and they will send them over, and we work with them nonstop for a while. I, like you, Ms. Tamika, I got promoted to deputy director in March of last year, so it was like, welcome aboard. Here's COVID. So we were actually appointed distribution for 10 counties in our district for MEMA. So MEMA would deliver everybody's PPE for the first responders in 10 counties. It would come to us, we would sort through it, and we would stack Issaquena County over here, Sharkey over here, Hines, Madison, and so on and so forth. So we spent the majority of our time during the summer and spring and summer just with organizing all of those supplies. So that, again, on top of everything else, all the stress of everything else going on, there was a lot of times I would talk to my wife and I'm like, I'm burnt out. I don't want to hear the word COVID anymore. And so, luckily Rankin County was blessed. We didn't have any major disasters during that time. Now, if COVID would have been about a month and a half earlier, we had the Pearl River flooding. If y'all remember back to February, we were heavily involved in that. Thankfully, the Rankin County side, the area that flooded was a wooded area. We didn't have as near about the damage that Hinds County had. But that's just something we look at. That's what brought me from firefighting into emergency management, is because we kind of are an all hazards group. We do severe weather, we do hazardous material, we do fires, we do medical. And that's what I tell people. I love my job. 98% of the time, I am excited about waking up and coming to work, and just being there and being available for people if they need our help.
Awesome. So I do have a few questions. One of the things that
Okay.
you mentioned is volunteer fire departments in most counties falls under the emergency management office, correct?
Yeah, in most of the counties, especially the ones that I'm familiar with, the fire coordinator is usually located with the emergency management
Okay.
agency. A lot of times you will have your EMA director is the fire coordinator and the EMS coordinator. But yes, typically, and especially in Rankin County, if you have a question about the fire department or anything, you would contact us.
So what will be the need for so many volunteer fire departments? Because you said you have 5 municipal city ones, and then you have 17 volunteer fire departments. So what will be the need to have so many volunteer fire departments?
Well, Rankin County, just the geography of Rankin County is spread out. And of course, on the western side along Pearl River area, is a lot of your municipalities, Richland and Florence and Pearl, and then it moves on up to Flowood. But as you move to the east, we get very rural. And when we get rural, it's hard for paid fire departments to cover that area. So volunteer firefighting in Rankin County has always been well received. Up until probably about 5 years ago, you didn't have a problem finding volunteer firefighters. The community was very involved in everything. But we've started seeing a trend, and it's not just us, it's nationwide, of people who are not really wanting to get into the volunteering for various reasons. Everything, the cost of living has gone through the roof, and volunteering your time it's not as easy to do that. So we've had some challenges with recruiting. The way we do our fire departments is, if you live in the district, I'll give you an example, the Star community. If you live in the Star community and you want to join the fire department, all you have to do is simply contact the chief or go to the fire station, and when you see some of them hanging around, and they'll be happy to talk with you. And like I said, we provide all the training for you. So all we need is your willingness to join the group, and we'll help you from there.
Yes, I remember seeing that report on the news. And I think that's when I contacted Mike Ward like last year about the decrease in volunteers for the fire departments. So what will be some of the, outside of the geography, will be some physical qualifications to be a volunteer firefighter? Will be the time commitment? Could you give us more on that?
Yeah, so each fire department, we kind of let them run we let the chiefs of the fire department kind of govern themselves, and we're kind of the overseer. So depending on where you live, say in Rankin County, you would have a different requirement. So we had one volunteer fire department that required their members to run 10 calls a month. We had one that not necessarily put you on a number of calls, but they would find creative ways to get the people involved in coming to to the cause, because that's ultimately what we need. We want a friendly community face whenever my grandmother has to call for chest pain or is in a car wreck. She wants to see her neighbor down the street helping her, to be there for her and give her that just a little bit of comfort.
Yeah, my grandfather was a volunteer firefighter for many years. I remember visiting him with our families from Starkville, Mississippi, in the country area of Crawford. And I remember one time being there in the summer visiting, and he got a call and he put on his suit and he ran to where he needed to go. So I know the importance of having those volunteer firefighters in the community, especially in a rural area.
Mm-hmm.
Talk a little bit more about when you're in a disaster. What does the EO do? Tamika talked about it a little bit, but what Red Cross does and how they partner with you all. But what do you all do from beginning to end, preparing and in the middle of it and after?
Sure. So actually, after I got hired on at Rankin LC back in 2014, we had a volunteer who was retired, and he stayed up there at the office, and that's what he wanted to do, 8 to 5, just like we did, even though he was retired. So he would help us out a lot with communications with the like utility companies if we needed to contact a gas company or whatnot. But he also started our social media, the Facebook page. His health declined pretty soon after that, so he had to leave us to get some medical help and everything. But they allowed me to take over the social media for Rankin County Emergency Management, and so I do the Facebook and I do the Twitter, and I really enjoy that because before a disaster is when we try to emphasize people to make their plans. We want you to have your emergency kit. We want you to make those contacts with the people in your community. A big saying that we have is the day of the disaster is not the day to exchange business cards. So we want to make those connections before, make a plan. We try to give you as much information, and a lot of people, are like, oh, you've told me 10 times, I don't want to hear it. But we put the information out there. What you do with it as a homeowner or as a citizen, that's up to you. So that's pretty much before the disaster. During the disaster, I'm in constant contact with the National Weather Service. We get our information from them. We get their graphics that they send out to everybody. We just basically copy and paste and put that out there because we don't want to accidentally give the wrong information. But once the disaster is going through, we just recently partnered with a program called Civic Ready, and it's a mass notification program. It's been in effect since February, so not very long at all. But people of Rankin County and surrounding areas, if they want to, can sign up at Civic Ready. We post our link on our social media and everything. They sign up for what alerts they want. If you want to hear about tornadoes, if you want to hear about severe thunderstorms, flooding, you get to choose what alerts you get. And when the National Weather Service pushes that information out, then they receive it. If they want it as an email, a text message, or a telephone call, they'll get it. So that's what we really like about the program, is that you get to choose, you get to customize what you want to be notified of. So that's the sign up part. But we also, about a month now, we have been participating in IPAWS, which is the Integrated Public Access Warning System. So if you've ever had your cell phone go crazy whenever you were driving through a certain area, and give you that information, we have the ability to do that now. And it's really important for us because we have a major artery coming through Rankin, I-20. And so we have a lot of people who aren't citizens of Rankin County, and they're driving from Meridian to Vicksburg, and they need to have the same information that everybody else has. So we can, I call it break into their phone and give them alert, but that's probably not the technical term and may turn some people off, but that's exactly what it is. We get you the information to your phone and then help you make the best decision. If you need to pull over, if you need to find shelter, then that's what we want you to do. Also during the storm, the Sheriff's Department, the Rankin County Sheriff's Department runs our FEMA 361 shelter, which is just a tornado safe room. It's not really designed to be an overnight stay. It's nothing like what the Red Cross does. This is tornado's coming. It's about an hour away. I'm gonna go to this shelter and we're gonna stand around and talk and watch TV. And as soon as the tornado passes, all right, you can go back home now. So, but we have found a lot of success with that. A couple of weeks ago when everybody was jumping up and down thinking that we were just going to get hammered with, I think we were in the purple on the graphics with the National Weather Service. We had over 270 people at our FEMA safe room.
Wow.
And one of the questions I get from our news partners is, well, how are you going to do that, bring people all together with COVID going on? And obviously it's a very logical concern. We do the mask, we do social distancing as much as possible, but there comes a point in time sometimes where you cannot social distance. And at that time we choose life over limb. In other words, we'll do the best we can to protect you, but we're going to get you into our shelter when the tornado is coming through. So they do a very good job of running that and organizing that, making sure it's staffed and everything. But it is just a temporary shelter, temporary safe room. And then after the disaster, we sometimes get phone calls from different agencies. After the river flooding back in February, I believe it was the United Methodist group contacted us, and they had already assembled some buckets, some little 5-gallon buckets with some cleaning stuff in it and everything. And thankfully, we did not have any houses that really got water in them that they were going to have to use at that particular time. But knowing that they're available helps out a lot. Knowing that the people are ready to help, because it's a terrible feeling when you go through during a storm and let's say you've got flash flooding going on and you're riding through and making sure that someone can get out of their house if they want to. If they're handicapped or whatever reason, and we need to help them out. That's great and all, but when the waters do recede, where do we just wash our hands and walk away? That's not something that we want to do. And so utilizing groups like the United Methodist and everything just kind of gives people a sense of, everything's going to be all right. It may not look that good today, but tomorrow's a new day, and there are people out there who care about me and want to help me. And so we try to get people in touch with those volunteer agencies as much as possible. And, if we give somebody the one number and that's not the right number, these agencies are connected together. So they will refer them to the agency that can help them the most. And that's what it's all about, is getting back on our feet, because we haven't done any good. If the disaster goes by, you're left with a house that's got mold in it now. We want to get you back to as best we can to the way you were before the disaster. That's our goal.
Awesome. How many people does that little shelter fit in normal, well, in not normal times,
In normal times.
before COVID?
Yeah, so I think it's rated for, and it's on the plaque outside the door, and I just hadn't looked at it probably this past year, but I want to say that it can take almost 1,000.
Wow.
Now that would be nearly shoulder to shoulder in there, and it wouldn't be the most comfortable for sure. But we are actually in the process as of today. I started writing the grant paperwork to expand and get us 2 additional FEMA 361 shelters. So right now, our shelter is located in Brandon, which is right in the middle of the county. We're looking at putting one up to the north and one down to the south. So because one of our complaints that we get is, I have to drive 35 minutes to get to a shelter. And, you know, when time is of the essence, we don't want that to be a hindrance, because people say, well, I can't make it now, so I'm just going to stay in my manufactured home. And that's the absolute worst place you can be. So
Mhm.
hopefully, if all goes well with this grant thing that we've got going on right now, before too long, we'll have 2 additional safe rooms.
That is awesome. And one extra more question. You mentioned
Mhm.
the disaster reservists through MEMA. If someone wanted to volunteer and get involved with that role, would they just go to MEMA's website, or how do they apply for that?
Yeah, that's exactly correct. When you go to the MEMA website, there'll be a place up in the corner, a tab up there that talks about reservists. It'll have a little short application to fill out. I'm actually a reservist as well, so I can go help out if Rankin County's not involved. The hurricanes come and tropical storm and there's damage on the coast. Rankin County's not involved. My boss will release me to go down there and help them. And I go as a disaster reservist. And what a lot of county EMAs don't realize is that if they ask for a disaster reservist, the counties don't have to pay for them. MEMA will actually pay for them. So um, they're volunteer, but they're paid volunteer. And so MEMA makes sure they have the training that they need. They do an availability call down list, kind of like the Red Cross does. You know, they'll send out an email the day before, hey, we got this hurricane coming in, who's available? And you let them know what works for you. And so it's a very good program run by some really good people over there, and they help out tremendously.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brian. I appreciate it. I've learned so
You're
much
welcome.
today. I really appreciate that. So, do you, Brian or Tamika, do you all have any announcements? Because we're going to get to community announcements. Do you have anything you would like to share with the group?
Well, first of all, I do want to, a couple of things that Brian said. First, I want to commend you for the 361 shelter efforts during the storm, because I was watching on television like a lot of us at home. And one of the things that stuck out to me, everyone did have their mask on, and everyone seems like they follow that advice that we always tell people, bring some comfort items. I remember specifically there was a table, looked like a family. They were all sitting there playing cards. So, because you don't know how long you're going to be there. So obviously they left home with some items to make them comfortable. And I saw someone that had a blanket. So that was just good TV when I saw that happening, of just people being prepared for disasters. And then also with the United Methodist Committee on Relief, obviously I keep a heart for the church, because after serving as their communications specialist for about 5 years with them, so I'm very familiar with that long-term recovery plan and how we work so closely together to make sure the residents has help afterwards. And so I'm just so proud to be on both sides, the immediate and then actually telling the story on the back end of how the community can still get help. But the one thing I want to ask you, Brian, because a big role, my role is to work closely with the elected officials. So I'm, really, reaching out to the mayors and the, county board of supervisors, aldermen, and I want to know, how do you work with them and just kind of educating them on particularly during a disaster, or what you're doing in the community?
Right, good question. So actually, there is a class out there that is specifically designed for elected officials. I can't remember the number. I want to say it's like 420 or something like that. But and we get fairly good participation on that. But a lot of times you will find, I can speak for Rankin County, our board of supervisors back us 100%. They are a lot of times, some of the supervisors will come out to the disaster with us. And what do you need? What can we get you? As we saw with this past ice storm, Ice Mageddon, as I call it, there was very limited, thankfully, limited travel on the road or whatever, but we would have a supervisor, elected official show up just to hang out, even when there's not a TV camera there, just to hang out with us. And that lets us know that they have our back, and whatever we need, they will get it. Smaller town down here in Florence is where I'm from. I'm actually an alderman on the board. So I am one, I guess, if you will. But yeah, we get really good participation from our cities and our board of supervisors with the elected officials. You know, sometimes it just takes a little bit of education. I know about 3 years ago at one of our conferences, the MML or Mississippi Municipal League, for mayors and aldermen, we actually had a whole track set up for emergency management type stuff. And MEMA came out and did some talking, and I believe some volunteer organizations came out and did some talking. So that's what I would recommend. We actually have an election year this year for cities. So there'll be a new group of people probably coming in after June. So, you know, if I was a volunteer agency or organization, I would get in touch with conferences like the MML so that they can get out there and that's the best way to let the majority of elected officials know what you guys have available to them.
Wonderful. Hopefully you're getting my emails. I know I have stuff shooting there, you know, in your area. I don't know the email address right now, but I'm glad to know that I've put a face with someone with out of the Florence area. So I'm going to be bugging you.
Absolutely. Bring it on.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I think that's all that seems like. Oh, also too, your social media. You know, I do, you know, follow your social media too. So I even, you know, people have contacted us. You know, I've been a few times in the past. I've been able to go right to your social media page and just to kind of, you know, share the resource of what's going on. So, you know, thank you for, you know, keeping that very active because a lot of times you know, that's, you know, we're waiting to, you know, hear from you because I know you're, you know, elected officials are busy. Everybody's, you know, you got tons of phone calls and I know you work closely with our team, Deborah and Barbara, but, you know, for me, you know, I'm able to, you know, go and see, you know, what you are posting and it's been very, very helpful, you know.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yes, Brian does stay on top of that. I follow county EMA as well, and I bug them. I get into their inboxes. So Brian does respond.
Yeah, not a problem.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
So we're going to get into a few community announcements. If you know anyone in Forest, Mississippi, Scott County, there will be a mobile pantry there tomorrow with the Mississippi Food Network. They have these all the time in partnership with Tyson Foods. So please refer people to that. You know, it's first come, first serve. You have to, please don't arrive before 9:45. So that's tomorrow from 10 to 12 in Forest, Mississippi. FEMA is providing financial assistance for COVID-19 related funeral expenses incurred after January 20th of 2020. So examples of eligible expenses include transportation for up to 2 people to identify the deceased individual, the transfer of remains, the burial plot or cremation niche, or a marker or headstone. So there are several things that they are willing to reimburse. So you can contact FEMA by calling 1-844-684-6333 or emailing them as well. The Alliance for our nonprofits will be having our Nonprofits and Money seminar, Giving and Getting with Purpose. This will be May 7th. So this will be our first hybrid event. We're going to do this virtually and in person across the state in Clarksdale, Meridian, Gulfport, and if you're in Central Mississippi, in Canton at the CAF Center. So the first part will be a virtual keynote presentation, and we will explore creative ideas to raise money for all sizes of nonprofits, both rural and city. And part 2 will be a panel discussion from prominent Mississippi philanthropists. So they'll be sharing their preferences for how they respond to approaches for giving, what gives them great joy, and how they determine what projects and programs to fund. So you can register on our website at alliancems.org/training/events for that event next Friday, May 7th. Our next community meeting will be on May 25th at 6 p.m. And our guest speaker, we heard a lot about them today, will be the United Methodist Disaster Response in the Mississippi Conference. So we're looking forward to having them to hear more from them specifically. So I thank you all for attending. You all have been just great speakers, Tamika and Brian. I've learned so much from you, and I'm looking forward to hearing from more of your colleagues in the next 2 months. Thank you all so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.